Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's our literature unit for today as we work our way toward the end of the month of April. So for the next 3 days, we're going to talk about a work of literature. And it's actually a poem that we're going to talk about, a fairly recent poem, a 20th century poem by the famous poet T.S. Eliot, Thomas Stearns Eliot. And the title of the poem is The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. I'm familiar with this poem, very familiar with it. A friend of mine is a big T.S. Eliot fan,
really?
and he said that, well, in order to really appreciate a poem, you've got to hear it. So he was able to get me some recordings of T.S. Eliot himself reading this poem.
Oh, really?
And other poems. Yes, he's more of a 20th century poet, so of course there are many recordings available of him reading his own poetry. I recommend you listen to him reading it to help your listening comprehension ability. But we're going to talk about this poem today. We'll go through the poem itself in the first part of the lesson. We'll talk about T.S. Eliot himself in the next day. And then we'll go back to the poem and talk about some of the themes and ideas in the third installment of our literature unit for this month. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's read the first part of our lesson right now. T.S. Eliot's poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, begins with, "Let us go, then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table." Prufrock, the speaker, invites the listener to walk with him through desolate streets on a lifeless evening. The scene then transfers from streets to a social gathering in a room where women are discussing the distinguished Renaissance artist Michelangelo. Distracted, Prufrock notices that the yellow fog outside is like a cat which rubs its back upon the window panes. He is uncertain whether to join in the gathering or stand apart from the other guests, but he keeps telling himself that there will be time for 100 indecisions. Prufrock frets over the bald spot on his head, his thin limbs, and how other guests will see him. He is not unfamiliar with the unpleasant gazes fixed on him. He then thinks about the lady's bare arms and perfume, agonizing about whether he dares to approach a woman. At this moment, Prufrock feels like a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. It seems the party is almost over, but he's still unable to muster the courage to strike up a conversation. "I was afraid," he admits. After the event, Prufrock, with regret, speculates as to whether it would have been worthwhile acting assertively if his efforts are only to end in rejection. Thinking of his indecision, he says he is not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. He considers himself nothing but a minor character or the fool. Prufrock realizes he is growing old and questions his own sexual potency. At the end of the poem, he recollects that he has heard the mermaids singing, but he doesn't think they will sing to him.
Okay, guys, we're going to talk about this unusual love song. This poem is often just referred to as Prufrock, so if you hear someone say Prufrock, yeah, it's like that poem Prufrock, you know, they're talking about this. In essence, it's about a guy who just doesn't have a lot of confidence in himself, is afraid and indecisive, has a hard time approaching women, doesn't feel like, you know, it'll go very well. It's actually also in our slang vocabulary. If you look it up in Urban Dictionary, it actually is a word somebody could call someone else and say, "Oh, you're such a Prufrock," which means, "Oh, you just don't have any confidence. You're very indecisive. You can't ever make a decision. And you're afraid of girls, afraid to ask them out." So let's take a look at this. We're focusing on T.S. Eliot's poem, of course, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And it begins with the line, "Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table." Tom said to me before we started that he had a friend who sent him a recording of this. I think that's a great idea for our listeners to actually find a recording online and listen to it being read out loud. It'll help you understand a little bit more. Also, you'll know how to pronounce some of these words like etherized, which isn't something we talk about very often at this level. So let us go, then you and I. We're going to go together somewhere. That line just symbolizes that it's the next line in a poem. If you look up the poem, you'll see how T.S. Eliot actually meant to have certain lines together. You should always write it like that.
Indeed, and I did want to mention here the title of this poem is The Love Song. A song is usually sung, like, "Oh, I come from Alabama, wear the banjo on my knee." But in this particular case, it's a poem that's read aloud. A lot of times poems are considered songs, even though we don't know what the melody is. But this is read out loud, and he's talking about the evening, I guess dusk, the end of the day, and the patient is etherized. That's an old term now. Nowadays, we use anesthetized or anesthesia.
Right.
Back in the time there, they used ether to put a patient to sleep before an operation. And Prufrock, the speaker, invites the listener to walk with him through desolate streets of a lifeless evening, on a lifeless evening. So these are desolate streets. Desolate in this particular sense here means there just aren't any people around, and it's kind of bleak and dismal there. Maybe it's a depressed town or something like that. Nobody wants to go out. Maybe the crime rate is really high, or everybody's moved away or something like that. So it's desolate streets here, empty streets that are kind of depressing. And it's a lifeless evening. Nobody's out and walking about. It's kind of depressing. Who wants to go for a walk on an evening like that?
Yeah, so then the scene transfers from streets to a social gathering in a room where women are together discussing the distinguished Renaissance artist Michelangelo. So we go from him wandering around the streets, feeling depressed. If you're desolate, like Tom said, you're kind of down. There doesn't seem to be anything to look forward to. So he goes from that moment and then reaches, I guess, some social gathering. Maybe they're having a party somewhere. And if you have a gathering, it's just people who get together. Oftentimes these days we'll go, "Oh, we're having a get-together," which is actually being used as a noun. Get with a hyphen, together. We're having a get-together next Sunday or next Friday. You want to come. My family's getting together. That's a verb phrase. So there's a social gathering where people are together, and it's a bunch of women talking about Michelangelo. If you're distinguished, you're respected for something you've done. People know about you. Renaissance was a period in history when a lot of science and art was flourishing. I would say the Renaissance was like 1400 to 1600, that period of time. Michelangelo, of course, is very famous. He invented things. He painted things. He could do it all. So he goes from the street into this social gathering, and let's see what he finds.
Yes, he is distracted, and Prufrock notices that the yellow fog outside is like a cat which rubs its back upon the window panes. So I guess he's at this gathering, or he's looking in the window of a gathering, and in the room the women come and go talking of Michelangelo. That's the line there. And he's distracted, which means he can't keep his attention focused on one thing. He gets distracted. We can often get distracted at school, for example, if we're supposed to be listening to our lessons, listen to our teacher, but we've got our phone turned on, and we're distracted because a little indication has come on that says we got a message from somebody, so we're distracted. We've got to check it out. So he's distracted here. I guess he's looking around. He sees this yellow fog outside. Is fog yellow? That's kind of strange. Maybe it's sulfur or something like that up on Yangmingshan. And that sulfur is like a cat, and cats rub its back upon the window panes, which is basically the window, or the window pane is like the bottom part of the window, right?
No, the window panes are those little pieces of wood that run across the window. It kind of dissects it or crosses. It's horizontal and vertical. Those are window panes. Nowadays, we don't need as many window panes because we have, large stretches of glass. But back then, especially the late 18th century, I'm saying that wrong, 19th century, late 1800s into 1900s, they didn't have large pieces of glass. They weren't able to produce such huge pieces of glass, and they needed the wood to support the glass. So those are window panes. I love window panes is a word we have in one of our Christmas songs. So I love window panes. My mom, when we built our house, actually asked the construction folks to put window panes in the windows in some of the windows. So it looked kind of old-fashioned. She likes that. Okay. So he is uncertain, looking in whether to join them. Ooh, do I go in? Bunch of women in there. Oh, I don't know. Will I have anything to say? He sounds a little socially awkward, not very comfortable in social environments. So he's standing outside or maybe at the door, wondering if he should just stay where he is or go ahead and move in and join the gathering. If you stand apart from people, you're separated from them. But he keeps telling himself, that there will be time for 100 indecisions. It sounds like this guy just has a hard time making a decision. When you're indecisive or you have a problem making a decision, it usually means you don't have a lot of confidence or self-confidence to make those decisions. It sounds like Prufrock is kind of like that.
Indeed, he says it's time for you and time for me and time yet for 100 indecisions and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. Okay, that brings us to the midway point of our article for today. Let's take a break right now and listen to our Chinese teacher.
大家好，欢迎收听 English Digest， 我是哈利。今天我们要阅读的文章是文学单元 Unit14 An Unusual Love Song 的第一天课程。今天的课程介绍知名诗人 T.S. Eliot 非常有名的一首诗，名称是 The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock， 中文翻译为阿尔弗瑞德·普鲁弗洛克的情歌。提到情歌，我们通常想到诗情画意的内容，就像苏打绿的小情歌一样。所以我们看到第一段提到这首诗，一开始写着 Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky. 那么我们走吧，你我两人，当黄昏铺展天际。这场景多么美好，一对恋人在暮色之下散步着。下一句接着说 Like a patient etherized upon a table， 犹如上了麻醉躺在手术台上的病人。不知道大家有没有觉得很诡异？怎么场景突然转变成病人被 etherize 被麻醉在手术台上呢？一般情歌通常不会描述开刀动手术的场景，很明显的，虽然这首诗的名称是 Love Song， 但却隐含其他意义。而诗中的主角 Prufrock 也不是一般情诗里勇敢表达爱意的男主角。我们接着看到第一段的第三句The scene then transfers from streets to a social gathering in a room where women are discussing the distinguished Renaissance artist Michelangelo. 场景接着从街道转到了房间里的社交聚会，那里有女人正在谈论著名的文艺复兴艺术家米开朗基罗。动词 transfer 有转换、调动、转变的意思。Transfer from one place to another 就是指从一个地方转换到另一个地方。where 在本句是关系副词的用法，就相当于 in which， 而本句有一个形容词 distinguished， 意思是卓越的、著名的，相当于 prominent， P-R-O-M-I-N-E-N-T， remarkable， R-E-M-A-R-K-A-B-L-E。 如果这个字去掉 ed， 就变成动词 distinguish， 意思是区别，使有特色。常见的片语 distinguish between A and B 或 distinguish A from B 就是指区别 A 和 B。例如 It's hard to distinguish between Judy and Julie as they are identical twins。 很难区别朱蒂和朱莉，因为他们是同卵双胞胎。我们接着看第一段的最后一句。He is uncertain whether to join in the gathering or stand apart from the other guests, but he keeps telling himself that there will be time for 100 indecisions. 他不确定是否要加入聚会，或是站得离其他宾客远远的，但他一直告诉自己还有时间，迟疑不决个100遍。Whether 是是否的意思，其后引导名词子句，可做主词、受词或主词补语。例如 I don't know whether I should go to college or find a job after I graduate from high school. 我不知道我高中毕业后是否该上大学或找工作。当 whether 子句里的主词和主要子句的主词相同时，可将 whether 子句里的主词和助动词删掉，用 to 代替。所以刚刚例句里的 whether 子句又可以改成 whether to go to college or find a job。 在今天的文章中，我们可以看到作者用了好几个 whether 子句，巧妙地衬托出诗中主角 Prufrock 的个性，也就是第一段的最后一个引言 100 indecisions。 名词 indecision 是优柔寡断、迟疑不决的意思。Prufrock 不像一般情诗里的主角能够勇敢地表达出自己的爱意，而是不断地犹豫不决，不敢行动。 Indecision 的形容词就是 indecisive， I-N-D-E-C-I-S-I-V-E。 例如 An indecisive person is unable to lead a team to success。 优柔寡断的领导者无法带领团队迈向成功。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, let's continue to talk about the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Gee, I wish I could just read this poem to you and not talk about it, but in any case, we're talking about what this poem is talking about. So we're introducing you to a man who sounds very insecure. He's at a party where obviously everybody else is smarter than him. He's indecisive. He sees this yellow fog outside, and he's not sure if he can participate in the conversation. And he talks about indecisions. There are just so many things that we need to think about and make decisions about. Now, Prufrock here is also an aging man, so he's kind of insecure about that. Prufrock frets over the bald spot on his head, his thin limbs, and how other guests will see him. I suppose we all kind of feel that way from time to time.
Sure.
If you fret about something, you kind of worry excessively about something. He's got a bald spot on his head. Of course, men are always worried about going bald. That's why you see all these commercials on TV about these hair tonics that will regrow your hair or something like that. So going bald or losing your hair is a sign of aging. You've also got thin limbs. You're weaker than you were before. Limbs, of course, are your arms and your legs. He's not as muscular as he used to be, and he's afraid that the other guests will look at him and think, oh, this guy's a loser. He's got a bald spot. He's not very strong, and he's just kind of standing there by himself. He's kind of insane, maybe.
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe not that bad.
No. He's just very, he lacks a lot of confidence. The way we use it today, you could say, hey, don't be a Prufrock. Go ask that girl out. Or I can't believe you didn't ask her out. Just kind of afraid to move or do anything. So he's worried about how he looks. Most of us have those thoughts every once in a while, whether we have confidence or not. He is not unfamiliar with the unpleasant gazes or looks that people are giving him. If you gaze at someone, you look at them. Here, the gazes are fixed on him. If a gaze is fixed on you, someone keeps staring at you and they don't look away. And he's not unfamiliar when you put two negatives together, guys. It changes into a positive, which means he is familiar with people just giving him a weird look, staring at him. So he then thinks about the lady's bare arms and perfume, agonizing about whether he dares to approach a woman. So they've got probably beautiful dresses on. He can see their bare arms. Bare just means without clothes. Someone would say, why are you walking around in bare feet? Or why are you walking around with bare feet? You don't have your shoes on or socks or 拖鞋, as we say here. So they've got beautiful dresses on. He can see their arms, which are beautiful. Back when T.S. Eliot was alive and younger, women didn't wear what they wear today. So seeing a woman's bare arm was a big deal. So they've got perfume, which makes them smell good. But he's agonizing about whether he dares to approach a woman. If you agonize over something, it means you're really actually in pain over something you have to do. We'll often use this verb to talk about agonizing over making a decision. Or this is agonizing. That's a adjective, it really hurts. But if you agonize over something, it's causing you a lot of mental pain, physical pain. You just can't do it.
Yep, and Prufrock feels like a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. Ragged here just means kind of old and used. Ragged clothing, for example.
Yeah.
You can't really wear it anymore. It's all torn and tattered. Scuttling here, just kind of moving quickly with short steps, scuttling across the floor like...
cockroach.
Like a crab would or a cockroach, etc. And it seems the party is almost over, but he's still unable to muster the courage to strike up a conversation. I was afraid, he admits. I think this is something a lot of guys go through.
Sure.
You're at a party. There's a girl across the room there that you want to meet, but my goodness, time is running out. I'm going to lose my opportunity. What am I going to do? But here he's unable to muster the courage. Muster means to strike up the courage or find the courage or generate the courage to strike up a conversation. Hey, I've seen you somewhere before. Do you come here often? Something like that. You probably have to think of a pickup line, as we say. And he's unable to actually strike up that conversation. He says, I was afraid. I guess he's just too insecure.
So in the next paragraph, it says, after the event, after the gathering ends, Prufrock, with regret, speculates as to whether it would have been worthwhile acting aggressively, assertively here, if his efforts were only to end in rejection. So... He didn't choose to go, so after it's all over, he's sitting there kind of guessing. If you speculate, you kind of form a theory about something without really having any evidence. You're kind of guessing about what might have happened. He speculates as to whether it would have been worthwhile. Worth time, if it would have paid off, you could say, if he had acted with confidence. If you were assertive, you act with confidence. Things don't scare you. You stand up for yourself. If he'd done that, but then had been rejected. So even after it's all over, he thinks, well, even if I had had confidence and talked to the girl, she probably would have turned me down anyway. Rejection is the noun form of the verb to reject. Reject is used to talk about someone who says no to an offer that you give them. It could be a date. It could be that you want to sell a new product and you go and your customers reject it. Or maybe you wrote a manuscript. You want to get a book published, but the publisher rejects you or turns you down.
Rejection, of course, is the noun here. He's afraid of rejection.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little sour grapes here, too. Well, I didn't really want to talk to her anyway. It wouldn't have been worthwhile. So thinking of his indecision, he says he is not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. A prince, of course, is somebody who doesn't have to worry about things like that. They've got tons of money. Lots of women want to be with him.
Yeah, but Prince Hamlet was also very indecisive, remember?
Right.
Yeah, his whole to be or not to be was about not making a decision.
But here he is very indecisive, so that's kind of interesting here. He was not meant to be Prince Hamlet either. He considers himself nothing but a minor character or the fool. I don't believe there was a fool in Hamlet, but there was in Macbeth, the fool.
Yeah, but there's a line in Hamlet where he says, or to act the fool. I think Prince Hamlet does decide to go ahead and do something, so he isn't Prince Hamlet. Which means he never did decide to act. He just kept thinking about it. So
he never actually killed his uncle directly. It was kind of sort of an accident or something like that. But that's a whole other story, Hamlet here. But in any case, he considers himself, Prufrock here, considers himself nothing but the fool. And Prufrock realizes he is growing old and questions his own sexual potency. What was the line? I grow old, I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled and walk on the beach or something like that. And so at the end of the poem, well, I should talk about potency here. Potent means it's effective. It can do what it's supposed to do.
Strength.
Indeed. So he questions his own sexual potency. Can I get my future wife pregnant, for example? Am I potent enough? And at the end of the poem, he recollects that he has heard the mermaids singing, but he doesn't think they will sing to him. So that's kind of how the poem ends. It's toward the end of the poem. The actual line at the end is something, voices or something, and then we drown. I think that's how it actually ends. It doesn't sound very optimistic here.
It's very depressing.
There are some, references to the ocean. So he's going to drown in the ocean, scuttling across the floors of silent seas and stuff like that. So that doesn't sound very optimistic here. So if you're growing old and you're kind of pessimistic and you're going through your midlife crisis, well, maybe this poem is something you should avoid, maybe, or maybe read and get some ideas.
No, I think by reading this, you can choose not to follow his path. Don't waste your opportunities. Go for it while you still can. Right now, we're going to listen one more time to our Chinese teacher.
文章的第二段提到 Prufrock 对自己的身材和外表没信心，因而不敢和女性交谈。我们看到这一段的第二句 He then thinks about the lady's bare arms and perfume,agonizing about whether he dares to approach a woman. 他接着想起女士们裸露的手臂和香水，苦恼着他是否敢接近女人。dare 在此做一般动词用，胆敢的意思，后面接不定词 to 加原形动词。dare 也可以做助动词用，常用于否定句，后面接 not 再加原形动词。例如 Jack doesn't dare to talk back to his father.杰克不敢跟父亲顶嘴，这句也可改成 Jack dare not talk back to his father. 文章的最后一段提到 Prufrock 一直不敢有所行动，害怕自己被拒绝。我们看到这一段的第三句 He considers himself nothing but a minor character or the fool. 他认为自己仅仅是小角色或是丑角。动词 consider 是考虑的意思。Consider A to be B 是指认为 A 是 B，其中 to be 可以省略，而 be 可以是名词或形容词。例如 Jason considers himself to be a hero, but he is actually considered a coward. 杰森认为自己是个英雄，但他事实上被认为是个懦夫。以上就是今天的课程，谢谢大家收听。
That's it for today, everybody, but please make sure you join us next time when we talk about the author of our featured poem, J. Alfred Prufrock. The author's name is T.S. Eliot, so please join us then. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.